Good morning, good day, good evening. Wherever you are in the world, I am Squigs, reporting for the Poetry News. And this week, Eddie and I are welcomed by our good friend and member of the Poetry Global Network. Please help me in welcoming Lacan.
Hi, guys.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm imported.
And of course, Lacan will be filling in for Martin Gray, and as well as R.sen, I believe.
Yes, absolutely. So excited. Thank you so much, Squigs and Eddie, for welcoming me here at the Poetry News by the Poetry Global Network. My name is Lakan, and I am from the Philippines, and I am bringing to you the first news today. And it's hot, 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 because it's going to be the thought erotic submission. And I know that people are thinking, sexual, steamy. Yes, it is, because we are ready to welcome new poems that are thought provoking, that can talk about sexuality, sexual orientation, and health, gender identity, and equality, and more. And I think this platform is definitely welcoming poetry from all over the world, including that airplane that you can now hear in my background, because we are live today. And this platform is open for submissions. Only $3 to submit your poems. And if you're published, you don't have to pay for anything. And I think that is welcoming different art forms from poetry to visual arts, music, even. So do go to their website and explore how you can submit and be part of this fantastic platform, and to really express that identity, that sexual hunger that people are repressing. And I think maybe it's time to express those emotions. And you can submit it in their website at www.thethoughterotic.com. And we can't wait to read your poems. So do check it out. And I wonder if my heralds, Eddie and Squigs, can latch on some steamy poetry as well.
Can leash on. Uh, Starting with a pun. Uh, the thing about erotic or sexual poetry, to me, I've never written anything that has to do with erotic or of sexual nature, which is kind of odd because sexuality is natural to the human being. So, but I never thought of writing anything. But maybe now with this submission, I could explore this side of my writing and embark on this journey of erotic writing. What do you think, Swift?
I myself am always looking for the opportunity to submit. If y'all get me, erotic poetry though is it's a very sensitive topic to write about, and I'm open to suggestions of
Yeah,
what to write, and I'm looking forward to seeing other submissions to this wonderful central project.
but what do you think about erotica as a form of poetry? Because it is a very natural feeling, emotion, or this urge to actually explore one's physicality, and the sense of identity of that sexual orientation. What do you think about that in poetry?
Well, if you forgive the
Uh,
pun, I find a lot of erotic poetry these days to be somewhat heavy-handed, lacking sense of eloquence to it. You don't really have to call it a flower to be flowery, I would hope. But yeah, I think that it's a delicate touch to write proper erotic poetry. For me, what do you think, Eddie?
how about you, Eddie? Like,
Uh,
how do you
God.
feel about erotica in poetry?
In poetry. So the thing about it is that now I always look at how the world has progressed and how it affected erotic poetry. Like Squigs said, it's more. What was the word that you used? Sorry.
Heavy-handed.
Heavy-handed. Right. Like Squigs said, it is kind of heavy-handed today. Now that the world has become more progressive, or the majority of the world has become more progressive, so writing poetry, writing erotic poetry, is more in your face. It's more out there. Earlier, you would want to write about erotic poetry, but you would, in a way, hide it through metaphors, through these subtle images. Whereas now, a lot of people just write about it, and just, it's an erotic poem. It is about sex.
I think it's that liberty to
Yeah.
write about sensitive or private
Mm.
um, type of emotions can be a bit of a challenge. But I'm very sure that one of our viewers would definitely want to explore that. So you just have to go into the thoughterotic.com website and submit that emotion. And who knows, you'll be the next T.S. Eliot, or other erotica poets that people would love to swoon on. So thank you so much for your very, very hot opinions coming from our other heralds, Eddie and Squigs. Now, coming up, I know that Eddie has more hot things up for you, and it's going to come after this break.
Thank you, Lakan. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Eddie, and I'm joining you from Batoon in the north of Lebanon. And today I am bringing you a workshop that is really great for anyone who identifies as male. This workshop is hosted by the Robles Rights production, and it is titled Mindful Masculinity, Balancing Male Divinity. And the topic of masculinity is something that is being explored a lot recently, or at least I've been reading about it a lot, because the whole idea of masculinity and femininity are things that are socially constructed. They are things that human beings created. So what makes masculinity, and how can we deal with that? This workshop will have 3 sessions. The first one starts next week on Monday, November the 1st at 10 p.m. GMT, and the other 2 will follow every Monday. And it is hosted and led by PGN's own Paul LaTorre, and it will focus on the balance between the divine feminine and masculine for those who identify as male. Within this workshop, you will feature work from non-binary and masculine male poets who stress themes of cultural identity, representation, toxic or oppressive masculinity, mental health and healing, along with trauma and survivorship. It will be an open, embracing space where those who identify as men can come to generate poetry by exploring generational wounds and sorting through cultural and historical traumas along with personal experiences. I repeat, this workshop will start next Monday, the 1st of November at 10 p.m. GMT, and every Monday after that for 2 more weeks, more workshops will be led. Let's bring back Squigs and Lacan. And what do you guys think about the whole idea of masculinity, and how do you think this could be explored in poetry?
I think it should be explored in a creative sense. Um, well, we are definitely in a time that it's different. Like masculinity is something synonymous or easily tagged with toxic, and it almost feels bad now. you know, this really is a responsibility. You know, if you take on this identity, there's a responsibility here that one should be educated for. You know, there's a
Yes.
lot of historical connotations, and yes, you know, it's like masculinity can be seen as something that can be well, difficult but bad. You know, but I still, at least I'm from a mindset of a time where I believed in the gentleman, at least. You know, like a man is something honorable still, and times have changed, and it's great that there are workshops like this to address and explore the continuing dynamic idea of what is masculinity, I suppose. Lacan?
I think it's also important that we discuss that if you talk about gender equality, it is across the board, and I think exposing the trauma
Mm.
of the male persona is something that has not been explored much, and I think people have always been cooped up and had been reserved with that idea. And I think this is why a lot of men experience mental health, and they don't talk about it. And it's that fear of being judged. It is a kind of like a double standard. If you're a man, you shouldn't cry, or you shouldn't do certain things. But I think that this new era can be welcoming and should be welcoming. Um, Trauma, opinions, emotions of men and women, and gender, all genders, because this is what freedom is, I think, and poetry can be such a great vehicle to express that.
Indeed, and I'm glad that this workshop does they make sure that they mention that it is a safe space for men or people who identify as male uh, to be there to talk about these things that in a natural setting uh, wouldn't be there. Like you said, Lacan, this idea of safety and expression among men is often repressed and it's often hidden. Not many men or people who identify as male uh, have the courage to express themselves in any group because of these socially constructed roles and behavior patterns that are associated with identifying as male. From this, we will take another short break and then we will go back to our guest herald today, Lacan.
Welcome back. My name is Lakan, and I'm filling in for R.sen for today. And thank you so much, Eddie, because there's so much to be expressed, even for the male gender. So do catch that. And the website, of course, will be available for you on the description below. And if you have not liked this video by now, do like it and subscribe here at the Poetry Global Network to make sure that you have the hottest news, the hottest shows updated every time. Now, for this segment, I will bring in a new, like that's how new it is. I had to say it 3 times. By the Poetry Global Network, because on November 30th, we are going to be exploring something that we know is the season of the repressed. Because Halloween is coming up. This is where you dress up, you play pretend, and you dream, and sometimes even nightmares can be beautiful. So PGN is gonna have an open mic like no other at Haven. Haven is going to go scary mode. And we cannot help but look forward to it on November 30th. If you're interested to join us, whether to share some poetry or music or any other art form, do check our social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, and of course here on YouTube. So bring your best costumes, your most riveting poetry, and let the scare begin. I wonder, bring in back Squigs and Eddie. What is your feeling about Halloween?
Here in Lebanon, we don't celebrate Halloween. We celebrate, like, now it is commercialized. Like, there are parties, there are these outings, but the way the trick or treating thing happens later on in the beginning of December, uh, for another celebration. But I really like the idea of Halloween and costumes and all of that really takes on another level with poets, because I'm a firm believer of the death of the author, when it comes to writing, when it comes to any piece of writing, is that the poet or the uh, writer themselves is not necessarily the speaker in the poem. And I usually do that. Uh, I always say that whoever is like the poem, the speaker in this poem is not me. Even if I'm the one performing it, it's not Eddie, the one who is speaking in this poem. So I like this idea of Halloween being putting on this mask or putting on this costume, because as poets we do this, or at least I would like to believe that we do this all the time whenever we perform or whenever we put something out on paper, and it is interesting. But love the idea of seeing all of you on that Haven open mic. That last one was amazing, and even this one, I'm sure it will be amazing with everyone uh, having their costumes on. What are you guys dressing up for? Okay, we'll talk about that later.
The
What do you
options. I don't know. Like that'd probably be a surprise. So many ideas. I'd probably go as a Squigs though, most likely, whatever form. What about yourself, Lakan?
Well, actually, you have to better bring that costume because I know that Haven will have an award for the best dressed on this Haven event. And guess what? I heard also there's a slam.
Ooh.
Oh,
Yeah. So who is going to be bringing the scariest piece?
oh,
So yeah. So like for me, I think Halloween is a it is that part of the year where you can be anything you want to be, not just the scary ones, but sometimes fantasy, sometimes the real, but are just, well, repressed, so can be natural too, just like it is natural for men to cry, right?
hmm.
And also it's as natural as the news coming up next by Squigs, because you know what? I heard it's also natural to have wood in the desert. So let's discover that more. Thank you so much, Eddie and Swigs, for joining me in this segment, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Hello, everyone. This is Squigs again for the Poetry News, and I want to say thank you, Lakan, for mentioning that wonderful Halloween-themed Haven open mic, and I hope to see all of you there in different forms of costumes coming up. And for my segment today, I would like to draw your attention to an article from the www.telegraph.co.uk, representing Britain, a 65-foot tall tower that writes poetry. Why has the U.S. government spent 26 million on a poetry pavilion in Dubai? Expo 2020 artist S. Devlin explains. Now, the article is written by Tristram Fane Saunders. On the outskirts of Dubai, where the city meets the desert, there stands a poet. Though this poet is not a person, but a curious kind of building, made mostly of timber. It spells out its lines of computer-generated verse on a bank of towering LEDs, 20 meters tall. It looks beautiful. It writes beguiling, lyrical nonsense, and it has cost the UK government £26.2 million. This is the Poem Pavilion, created to represent UK at Expo 2020. Now, Expo 2020 is actually a COVID-postponed World Fair that opened earlier this month. British artist S. Devlin wanted to create something that would present Britain as a place where people from around the world are welcome and can all make a contribution. Anyone arriving at the pavilion first climbs through a zigzagging maze, otherwise known as a glorified queue, then contributes a word of their choice via an app. Now, a person walking through go through a choral chamber of music that weaves together various recordings before emerging outside to see a prose poem including their chosen word to appear on the pavilion's facade. A new poem appears every 90 seconds. The building is a sort of musical instrument, says Devlin. It's like walking through a trumpet. You blow. You've pressed one of the notes, one of the valves at the top to make a note, and then walk through where the music as poetry, comes out. According to Tristram famed Saunders, the poem it creates when he asks Devlin to put the word telegraph descends into drivel and goes. I remember a number of unscorched April trees on the beguiling night of the telegraph tours, but the shadow of the great self-moving sea. And this does make a striking metaphor for a newspaper, says Tristram. Still, without something to humanize the soft, unearthly melancholy, in its own words, the pavilion is just a big wooden box sighing at the moon. With no feeling, urgency, or intention behind it, the AI verse can't compare to flesh and blood poets, Devlin admits. The best things that are written because they are needed to be written. She says, it's never going to compare to the complex, evolved human need. Still, the very emptiness of the AI poetry is what can make it enjoyable on its own terms. It's like when you open and read a fortune cookie, says Devlin. The interesting point is what you read into it. The Expo 2020 runs until March 31st, 2022, and for more details, please visit expo2020dubai.com. And now I would like to welcome back my heralds and entertain a question about what has been the most interesting form of presentation for poetry you've seen. I mean, this is quite interesting. A 65-foot tall piece of wood in the desert there. But yeah.
It is beautiful. I saw the pictures. It is such a beautiful pavilion, a
Piece of wood.
beautiful monument.
Yes.
And it's amazing. I might go to Expo 2020 in December, and I did see that there are some countries that are tackling poetry, and I'm making sure to note them so that I can see those monuments and see those pavilions. But this is amazing, and the display of the poems for everyone to read that change every 90 minutes. That's a brilliant thing to do, and of course, like the article said, it's not like how it's the AI generated poetry is still AI generated poetry. It's not human. It doesn't have the emotion that humans can achieve in writing poetry. But still, this display is amazing, and I'm trying to think of other displays of poetry, but right now I'm just fixated on that. Yeah, I can't get over it.
Yeah, it's impressive, and I think what's more impressive is that it has come in these trying of times, where people actually can come together and to create such an installation, a powerful message that poetry lives on even in this pandemic, and people from all over the world can come together, to have this expression, this testament of moving forward. and and it reminded me a lot of the New York City Poetry Festival that just happened, which we actually covered here at PGN and the Poetry News a couple of months back, where they had a sun installation where it was a poetry installation of poems about the sun. And I think it was just wonderful that this is such a powerful platform for poetry, you know, and it's in the Middle East, which rarely gets attention in the world of poetry. So yeah, love that. Love that.
Yeah, it is. It is like, just to comment on this, that whenever people think of Dubai, usually they think of luxury, they think of technology, of all these advancements. So it is awesome that poetry now is involved, because the history of Arabic poetry is amazing. It's brilliant poetry, and now it is taken away by, say, in the desert, say in the Gulf area, where technology and money and oil and all of that is taking over. So it is great to see poetry making its comeback on such a huge platform, both literally and figuratively.
Actually, it's also interesting because like the first known author and first known poet came from the Middle East, and Hedwana, you know, and who was a priestess before Sumeria in the city of Ur. Now, it's interesting because one of like the most forward poetry festivals in the world is in the Middle East, which is the Emirates Festival of Literature. So I think it's such a strong message for the world that poetry is everywhere,
Yes,
even in the desert.
even in the desert.
Yeah, which is poetic in its own sense. And
Yes.
so, for more information on this, please visit the www.telegraph.co.uk. And yeah, so thank you again, my heralds, for a wonderful week of information, poetry, news, and such. Lacan, thank you for joining us. Would you like to talk about other shows here we have going on at the Poetry Global Network?
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'm always, it's an honor. It's my first time here at the Poetry News. I'm usually in the background, but to be in the forefront now, it feels very, very interesting, you know, and it's a new experience. And just like the new show coming up here at the Poetry Global Network, coming up is Bottoms Up. We'll be doing regionals come November, as well as a new show on TikTok. I'll be headed someone from the UK talking about relationships. And of course, we have your usual favorites. Of course, here, you're watching it right now, the Poetry News. We have also every Mondays at 7 p.m. London. Of course, we have the very, very exciting and much talked about the Poets Reacts, where four poets react on a poem they have never heard before, and which is every Saturdays at 1 a.m. London time. And we have the Poets Lighthouse every Sundays at 3 a.m. London time. And every Wednesdays, by the way, on Instagram, we are live with Breathe Poet at 12 noon New York time. And there will be more, and more shows coming up here at the Poetry Global Network. They need to connect with our shows. So better yet, I think Eddie has the links for that. Eddie?
Yeah. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, and now on TikTok. At the PGN official everywhere you can find us. Subscribe, follow, like, share our news, stay connected. Don't forget to like this video, comment, subscribe to our channel. Tell us what your thoughts are on. Thanks, Lakan. Everyone, make sure that you like this video. Comment down below what you think of erotic poetry, what your thoughts are on masculinity and its expression, what your thoughts are on Halloween, and what are you going to dress up as this Halloween, and the display of poetry in Expo 2020. Make sure that you subscribe to our channel and follow us on all of our socials, Instagram and Facebook, as well as TikTok. And if you have anything you would like to tell us, please make sure to send us an email at poetryglobalnetwork@gmail.com.
Thank you so much for those links, Eddie. I think a lot of people would love to get in touch with us. So please do send those messages away, and we'll be getting back to you very, very quickly. Thank you so much, Eddie and Squigs, for welcoming me here at the Poetry News.
You're
And this is
most
all that
welcome.
we have for this week. And stay tuned for all our shows. Thank you so much. Stay brave and stay lit. This is the Poetry News by the Poetry Global Network. Have a great day.